right. I'm going to present my screen. All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to this month's PatternFly community meeting. We'll be seeing a handful of updates from some of the PatternFly core team and hopefully have a little bit of time for questions at the end, but feel free to ask some in the chat as we go, as you have them, and we can try to address them. And as soon as this meeting is over, I will download the recording and upload it to YouTube, send a link to the YouTube video along with the slides in an email to the PatternFly mailing list. So if you are not on the PatternFly mailing list, I recommend doing that. And if you need a link or need information on how to join, feel free to ask in the chat or reach out to me. My name is Nicole. I am the Scrum Master for the PatternFly team. And all right, we can just jump into the agenda. Yep, I mentioned we have a few updates from some of the team members for some contributions that have been made over the course of the past month. But we will start off by an update from me about the beta components that we're hoping to promote this quarter. I'm gonna just quickly run through them so that you know that throughout the course of the next handful of sprints, we can solicit feedback on any of these components. A beta component basically just means that it's a little bit newer to the library, and we have not necessarily cemented the API yet. It's open for future feature enhancements and a little bit more evolution since it's so new. But as soon as it's promoted, the API will no longer change without lots of fanfare. And at this point, this list of components is scheduled to be promoted during mid-November. So I will quickly pull up this list. And if anyone has any feedback for these components in the meantime, or any questions, any of these components could be removed from this list before November. That's not a big deal. We can continue to make enhancements and evolve these components further and promote them in the future. So don't be too alarmed if you have lots of questions about one of these components, but definitely let us know. For release in mid-November, right now, we have slated this code block component as a handful of basic controls such as copying and the ability to add a few custom controls like execute code possibly, and an expandable section if you want to toggle showing all of a code block or not. Another component we're hoping to promote soon is the helper text component. It is primarily intended for use below an input, such as a password field or a form input in a handful of different states. We have the menu component. However, the menu component is big and it's already being picked up fairly quickly by a lot of products. So what we're hoping to do is just incrementally promote this component. There are a handful of features that are even newer to the menu component that will not come out of beta, but the very basic menu component we're hoping to get out of beta as soon as possible. So as products are definitely using this a lot, we're just gonna plan to have many conversations about it and see how soon we can get it in a state that people don't have to worry about the API changing out from under them anymore. The menu is designed to just be basically a drop down that can be put on any sort of toggle, and it can contain a list of items with a handful of controls such as favoriting or selecting and things like that. So definitely look into it if you haven't played with it yet, but it is getting picked up pretty quick, so that's exciting. Another component is the notification drawer. So it's used to display and notify the users of any notifications. Been out for a little while. We also have a select variant that you can use if you have a large number of items in a select. So you can click view more at the bottom of your select and drop down, and you'll see a little loading toggle, a loading icon spin as it loads more. So that's a feature we're hoping to get out of beta soon. Another one is a property of a select in the React implementation, which is kind of a niche use case, but sometimes for the type ahead select, where people can type in values to filter their long list of select options. There was confusion about how those values are persisted in the input, and if the user needs to explicitly select an item from the drop-down list if they've typed exactly what they intend to type into the type ahead. So if that sounds like something interesting or familiar or a use case here you've thought about, you might look at this prop. It's a little bit hard to, it's not a picture I can put in the doc to describe it, so worth investigating if you're curious. We have a sidebar component that kind of works as like a layout within a larger component to allow for things like having a stacked situation or a split situation for sidebars inside panels. You can have them on the left or the right. And that's the whole list for now. So not super long, but definitely let us know if you would like to be in the conversation for any of these components. And we have a few months. So that is all I've got for the beta component promotion. But the other thing I just wanted to point out that's happened over the summer is we've added a new section to the PatternFly website. We call extensions. So I have a picture of the website with a side nav right here and the extensions portion expanded. So that's where you'll find it located. Extensions are basically solution-based projects or scenarios. They're like PatternFly components because they use PatternFly, but they are more complex and they're built for a more specific and complex use case. Foundational PatternFly component usually is. And under the extension section, you'll see the sub-nav has community extensions. So community extensions are extensions that are contributed and maintained by like larger PatternFly community members. I have pulled up the page here that explains a little bit more about how they're maintained and what is delivered with them. We also have a list of available components that exist in these community extensions, along with links to any documentation if it exists, or the code base and the repos that they exist in. And this is a list that can be added to by any outside contributor if you have an extension that you are building that uses PatternFly. You can absolutely add it to this list. You just have to open a PR in PatternFly org repo, and you can add your extension or extended components to this list, along with any links out to relevant docs and code. So we'd love to see this list grow and grow. The other extensions listed under the extensions navigation item on the website are kind of informally called UXD, maybe formally called, I don't know, UXD extensions. They are fully supported by the Red Hat user experience team and are often used by multiple Red Hat products, which is why we want to support them. They are a more complicated scenario or solution that we are hoping to promote and see implemented across many different Red Hat products. So right now there are two on the website listed explicitly, the log viewer and quick starts, which quick starts specifically will hopefully be able to introduce you to the people who are maintaining that and give you more information probably at the next community meeting or at least soon. But that's a really exciting effort that's undergoing right now. And so we will keep you posted, and you might see that list of more complex PatternFly solutions for larger products growing in the future. So that is there. That is all the updates I have for the first two agenda topics. But up next, we have an update from PatternFly Core. So I'll hand it over to Michael.
Thank you. One sec, share my screen. Okay, great. Let's see. Up first, we have a couple of enhancements to the alert component. We added an inline plane variation, which is just like the inline variation, but without the box, the shadow, and the padding and all of that. So it displays inline like regular content. And it's intended for use where you would otherwise use an inline variation of the alert. And we also have a new version or variation of alert for expandable, so you can collapse the description of an alert, and then you have a toggle here that you can expand, and that displays the description. So you can see a couple of examples with the regular standard alert component and the inline alert component here. Up next, we have a new component called back to top. It's a pretty familiar pattern. You can see the documentation here. It's pretty simple, but I think a demo is a better representation of what that does. And this is a static demo. There's going to be some interaction type stuff with this button as you scroll the screen. But we're going to implement all of that once we've got it built on the React side. So this is just the core implementation before we get the React side built in. Up next, we've got some additions to the description list. First, we added a compact variation. And this is basically the same as the regular description list. It just has more compact row and column spacing between description term and description definitions, the pairs. And then after that, we've got a fluid variant. You use this with the horizontal description list. And basically, instead of the description list creating columns for the term, the terms only take up as much space as is needed, and then the value here displays inline next to the term. So you can see an example there. After that, we made an enhancement to the tabs component to support disabled tabs, also aria-disabled tabs, which is a pattern we have across a lot of components that effectively disables aria-disabled tabs. They effectively disable the element, except that the element can still receive focus events for things such as popovers, tooltips, that sort of thing, if you wanted that on a disabled element. Up next, a small update to our PatternFly icons font family, and then this also would be available in the React icons package. It's just a task icon, so you can see that here. It's pretty small, a little bit bigger. There you go, task icon. Let's see. Up next, we have a password strength demo. And so this is using the new helper text component. Specifically, it's using the dynamic variation of the helper text component. And you can see the various states here. Again, these are static, so they're not interactive like they will be in the React demo. But you can see the workflow here as you enter a password and the password strength requirements being met, not met, that sort of thing. You also see a new part of the form component, which supports this element over to the right of the label, and we're calling that the label info. You'll see an update about that in the React update in a bit because it's already been implemented in the React component. So I won't cover that, but you can also see that there. Let's see, and then last, we've made a few updates to our utilities. So these are really cool. The text utility and the background utility specifically have gotten a lot of color updates. And so looking at the text utility, we're basically making all of our global variables for text and status colors available in this utility. So if you wanted to use any of the global variable colors that we have, there's a mapping, I believe, 1-to-1 for the global variable name to the utility name. And you can see that here. We've got text color 100, 200, 300, active, primary, these dark theme colors, links, and then statuses for default, success, info, error, etc. Disabled text colors, and then icon colors. And then under the background color utility, same kind of deal. We've got active colors, primary, status colors that we use as background colors. And so that's really good. And then in the sizing utility, where we have height and width utility classes, we've added support for min width, max width, min height, and max height. And so we have a few variations of these classes that you can use for standard min and max width sizes. And then also via custom property, you'll see this in the documentation for the examples. You can set min and max width and height at specific breakpoints just by defining a custom property that we have set up for each breakpoint, and then you just pass the whatever value you want for that. And that's it for the core updates.
All right, awesome, thank you. All right, next up we have a handful of updates from the React team. And we're gonna start with Zack. He doesn't usually get to go first because his name starts with a Z, but today he gets to go first.
It's true. Yeah. All right. I'll present. Can you guys see the beautiful avatars?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, there's these two new variations which we added to React from core. It's hard to see, but there's a tiny border around the outside that you don't get in this one. It's hard to tell, but yeah, there's a light variation and then a dark variation. Then what took a ton of time and is a bit questionable is the flyout menu. So let's show you that. Is it even here? Or no, we moved it to the demos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Demos, composable menu. Yeah, we put it down here with these other guys. And what this does is it acts like a context menu. So you can have it fly out, and if you set it up correctly, it'll even go over your side nav, which I believe this one does. And this is akin to you know, the way like, oh, you guys can't see, but the way that Chrome's context menu works, or in some of the other operating systems, you know, when you go like file, new, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so that's what this guy's supposed to be. Took a lot of work to get him working. There you have it.
Thank you. Next up is Katie.
All right, let me just take over presentation when I can find my proper window. There we go. All right, so first up, this is also going to be living on the composable menu demos page, is a new demo of an application launcher, but using our menu components. So if I click on this icon, you'll see a very familiar looking menu. This is kind of a complex all-in-one example of our application launcher features. So we have like the inline search. So you have like a filtering for text. You have groups with titles. You have favorites. So if you click on the little stars, it'll do your favorites, and it'll also continue to filter them. This is kind of a implementation using application launcher with our menu components to give you kind of a greater degree of customization and flexibility, because this is using our kind of building block menu components, whereas application launcher was kind of a very one-to-one skin of drop down and was hard to customize for like extra options and such. So now you have an option here to just copy this demo code, and you'll have an application launcher using more updated components and more composable components. Next up, we have a update to our form component. This is for a form group. It's an additional label info. So you still have your title with your helper text, but in case you want to have a little bit of extra info over on this right-hand side, you can pass text or a node to it to kind of display some extra additional information. Third is our new editable label. This is under our label component. This is kind of our compact variant of editable. I think in the future, we're just going to try to design in a more intuitive editable label, because right now, if you click it, it'll become editable, which is not incredibly obvious from like just viewing it, which is why we're going to maybe include a different variant with links and icons. But if you press enter, it will save and then become uneditable. And you can do that also with keyboards. If you press like enter it again and press enter, or if you want to change that, you press enter again and you can back it out. And it has a little bit of helper text here just to be clear about how it's meant to be used for interaction. Next new component is the masthead component. This will look somewhat familiar to our page header component. It's kind of a more composable approach to our page header that will eventually replace page header in our demos, so look forward to that. You can see here you have your basic logo and content. You can pass whatever you want to the content. It has different stack and inline displays, which can be responsive. So you see if you're stacked, you have your logo up at the top header, whereas all of your content might expand out onto a separate line. It can be light or different colors, depending on what you pass to it. You can pass it insets to customize to the rest of your page, and it can also be used with router links. The benefit of this content section, I will show you in a demo right here. You can actually pass our toolbar component directly to Masthead, and this toolbar would have like a dropdown for a context selector, or maybe like users or a kebab. Basically, whatever you want to build for a toolbar, you can pass it directly to Masthead. So it gives you much more customization and control over what goes in the header. Next up, under our navigation component, we have a new variant called horizontal subnav. This is kind of an update to our tertiary nav because this ended up looking very similar to how our tabs looked. So it kind of gives you a new variant for how to get your horizontal subnav. And you can see that in a full page demo right here, which is in the React demos page on navigation. So this is just showing off, this is what it'll look like for horizontal subnav on a page. So you have like your top nav here, but you also might have a subnav that doesn't look like breadcrumbs or tabs. And lastly, because I was reminded when Michael was talking about this, we have our React implementation as well of the password strength demo. These are just using some basic validation and password strength rules. There is a recommendation for an open source password strength estimator right here. But if you can see, well, you could see my Google autofill trying to tell me what my testing thing was. But you can like fill it in and it will dynamically update the helper text as well as the required field. And if you fulfill everything, it will give you a rating of the password strength in the info group helper label. And that's it for me, I believe.
I think so. Thanks. All right, next up is Titani.
Hey, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So the first update I'm going to share is some updates we made to the accordion component. We added a few props to support some various modifiers. So the first one I'm going to show you is the bordered modifier. So if you add the prop is bordered to the accordion, then you will get a border between all the accordion items as opposed to what we had before. We also added support for display large. So this is the traditional display. And then if you apply this display size and set it to large, then you would get a large display. And also for the accordion, we're adding support for multiple bodies. So previously we could only add one body to the accordion content. So over here we had one body, but now here we have two. This is in one body, and this call to action button is in a separate body. And that's it for accordion updates. And for the expandable section, we made some updates to support the disclosure variation, which is used for marketing content. So over here, to get this disclosure variation, we add a display size of large and is with limited prop. And then the expandable section will appear like this as opposed to what we had traditionally. Okay, and then for the search input, we added support for a submit button. Previously, we were only supporting adding a submit button when we had an advanced search input like we have below here. So now you can just add a submit button to any search input. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. All right, we also have an update from Jesse.
Hi everyone, let me go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully you guys can see this. All right, cool. So I'm going to cover the footer and the view more variants of select, and basically some of the accessibility considerations we had to make. So if we take a look at the footer, when we add a footer that's kind of like a side section of the menu, there's some extra considerations. So we normally have our arrow keys that will allow us to navigate by keyboard through the menu items. When we add this side action, it kind of doesn't fall into the line with that. And so we kind of had to add an update for the accessibility of that. Same thing with the view more. If you click on the view more, typically you want to see more items, obviously. So I could easily click on it and see what comes up next and click any of my options. Well, when we have accessibility in mind, and we're going to use keyboard, let me go back to my view more here. And if I use this with keyboard, I use my arrow keys to go through here. I press enter. As you can see, my focus is completely lost. So if I was trying to do the same thing by keyboard, it would be a lot more difficult and need some way to go back to where I was. And I don't want to go through the entire page to get back into this menu. So with an update, we fixed both of these things. So that if you have the footer and you are going through with arrow keys, you can press tab and it goes to the action. Escape key, obviously exiting it, which is an awesome update so that we can interact with our menu, but still do that side action that is associated with it. Same with view more. If we now tab to view more, and actually let me refresh it so I don't have all my things already loaded. If I press view more, the very next item that is focused is that next item in the list, which is really going to help keyboard users continue with the actions they're already completing, which should hopefully help with our accessibility. So those are just some quick updates we made with the footer and the view more. And that's all for me today.
Thank you, Jesse. I want to point out that with these accessibility updates, the view more and footer additions to the select are candidates for promotion out of beta in the next couple months. So that was one of the last feature requests that we had for those two features or enhancements that we had in line for those features. So definitely play with those, but they are going to hopefully be out of beta very soon. Okay, next up we have Cooper.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Cool, so I'm just gonna go over a bunch of updates to some components. The first one is the switch component just gave the ability to show the toggle for the switch on the opposite side of the toggle label there. So just kind of flip it over to the right. You just give it a property of is reversed, and you're good to go. That one's pretty simple. The next one has to do with the tabs component. Before this, we had an inset property where you basically could manually put in what level of what size inset you want at different breakpoints. So what this page insets addition is going to do is it's going to match it to the page section spacing automatically. So you could just provide one property and automatically have this the inset of your tabs to match the page section there. Okay, the next one is context selector. This one is basically adding a plain variable. You do provide two different properties to it, plain and with text. That's just to kind of to keep the box the same size, but overall it's just kind of taking away the borders and the shadow, but it works just the same as the previous one. And then for the popover, what we did is add a bunch of diagonal positions, and what that does under the hood a bit is basically adds 8 new positions to the popover. Instead of just having your standard top, left, bottom, and right, you can have these left end, left start, right end, right start, which correspond to different diagonal positions. And the last for me is the tree view. So added a property called has guides, which basically is going to add these little guidelines to follow the tree view down to all the different children, and then added 2 variants, compact and compact no background, which I'll get to in a second. But with these variants, it also allows you to pass an extra property to each one of the members of the tree view, and add this kind of description box there. And by default, the compact variant is going to apply this background to the children elements, but then the other variant is the compact no background, which basically just takes away that background there. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Next, I have a couple updates as well. So I will share my screen and walk you through them. The first one is another enhancement to the tree view that we were just looking at with Cooper. Basically, what I've done is extracted out the toolbar, which exists above the search or above the tree view and is used for things like containing a search. And what we've done to allow consumers to have a lot more flexibility if they wanted to add additional controls and if they wanted to place those controls either before or after the search or things like that is we've basically just allowed the user or the consumer to define a toolbar using the PatternFly toolbar component. And that will, they can pass that to the toolbar prop of the tree view. We also exposed a tree view search component, which just has a little bit of built-in features so that it can communicate, since it will know basically that it's communicating with the tree view. So it's, and you can place that anywhere you want in a PatternFly toolbar or in your own defined toolbar if you so need to pass that to the tree view and have that all work. So that's the first update. The next updates I wanted to highlight were both made to the table component. And the first is we have a tree table implementation of table, and it's relatively new, but for the first few releases that it's existed, it didn't have very good keyboard accessibility, or at least not the ideal, because you could tab through an entire tree view table before, but we're imagining a situation where you have lots and lots of data in your tree view, and that's one of the reasons you're using a tree view, so you can expand and collapse a lot of the data and not have it all filling an entire page. And so in that case, tabbing through entire tables of data can be very cumbersome. So what we've done is we've made it so that only the first item in your tree view or your tree table can be tabbed into. So if I hit tab one more time, it'll take me out of the table. And if I shift tab back into the table, I'll go back to the first focusable element within the tree table. And to navigate through the tree table, I use the arrow keys. So I'm using the left and right arrow key right here. And if I hit down, it goes to the next line. And so I'm using the arrow keys to navigate within the tree table. And if I hit tab, I exit again. So this prevents the user from getting stuck in the middle of a tree table with their keyboard and having to like tab for many lines to get out. It gives some shortcuts. And if I tab back into the table, I'll go back to right where I had it focused before. So hopefully that is useful. It is the same keyboard interaction that exists right now for the tree view component that we were just looking at before, and is a little bit of a different interaction than the rest of the table components right now, because tree structures have this pattern kind of as a standard. We are in conversations about other ways we can make our tables accessible to keyboard interaction. So if that's something that interests you, you can be part of that conversation. But yeah, that is the update to keyboard interactions for the tree table. Another table update is just basically an enhancement to an existing example I wanted to highlight. We had some products asking for this feature, so it is now live. This example basically is just the standard selectable table with checkboxes. But what we've done is kind of implemented a shift select feature, so that if I select the first checkbox and then I hold down the shift key, I can select an item further down on the table and it will select all intermediate items. So that is primarily an update just to the example code itself, not to the underlying component. So if this is something that you want to implement in any of your selectable tables, you can inspect the code in this example, and you can borrow that in your logic. But that's all the updates I have, I think. Just going to peek at the agenda and make sure I didn't forget anything extra. Nope, I think that's it. So that's all for the React updates. And now I will hand off to Matt for what we're working on.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to share my screen out. All right. So I just wanted to give a quick rundown of things that we're currently we currently have in progress. On the design side, to start with, we have kind of an active, I think, initiative in our backlog to start to think about a next generation of PatternFly look and feel. We currently don't have a specific target date for when that would be rolled out, but it is something we're starting to think about. And certainly, if anybody has feedback, input, things you would like to see as we evolve the design, do feel free to reach out to either myself or Michael Saldonia, and we'd be thrilled to receive your input. Next thing, which is a visual update we have been making some progress on, is revising the selected states for tiles and cards. Right now, we have some conflicts with the new selected state, new focus states, especially with the Chrome browser, where they draw a blue rectangle around the element that's in focus, which it was pointed out causes some confusion between our current selected look and the focused look. So we're looking to revise the visual appearance of selected states, and that should be rolling out soon. I'm currently working on for adding key value filtering to our type ahead select to better support attribute value searches from known options. Also, in a kind of more broadly, re-looking at filter patterns. We've had a lot of different requests coming from teams for more advanced searching and filtering. So we want to kind of take a step back and look at what we're currently supporting and where there are opportunities to enhance that. Also looking at enhancing file upload for supporting multiple file uploads, and enhancing labels to support both compact labels and provide better affordances for editable labels, which was something that Katie had mentioned earlier. If you want to see more details on any of these designs, feel free to click into the issues, or we also have a tri-weekly design share meeting, which happens on Wednesdays, which hopefully many of you are on the invite for that. If anybody's not on the invite for that and wants to be, feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll be happy to add you. Things that are currently being worked on by the core HTML CSS team, scalable vertical navigation, adding some new navigation patterns to our vertical navigation. In this last sprint, we rolled out Flyout navigation, which is now being worked on by the React team. We will continue to be working on drill down navigation and a nested third level accordion navigation. So look for those things to be filtering into the release over the next few months. We're working on a stepper component, which reflects progress through sequential tasks, and supporting horizontal table scrolling with the ability to assign sticky columns, which is a request that's come from a couple different teams. And then finally, on the React side, we continue to work on composable drop-down components. Katie demoed the work she's done on making a composable application launcher. Over the next few sprints, we will just continue to re-implement some of our drop-down components in a more composable form. We also are in the process of refactoring some of our demos to use the new Masthead component that Katie had shown. Currently in the process of doing the React implementation of the back to top component, adding autocomplete to our search component, and implementing the disabled tabs in our React tabs component. So as always, you can click to our GitHub roadmap project board, which goes into more detail on where issues stand on our roadmap. And I guess that's about it. Anybody have any questions? Okay, if not, back to you, Nicole.
All right, thank you so much. I will share out the screen one more time so you can see some links. All right. So that's all we have on the agenda for today. If anyone has any questions, we have some time. We could take some questions. And while you can raise your hand, I'm just going to quickly say that here's the link at the end of the slide deck right here to the PatternFly mailing list if you're not on it. I do send out the slides and recording from today's meeting to the mailing list each month. We also send out a quarterly newsletter and a few other updates when they're particularly relevant and for wide distribution, I guess. So it'd be great to be on the PatternFly mailing list if you're not. There's also my contact information. I mentioned that we have a new extensions page on the website. If you are curious about having your extensions, your PatternFly work added to the community extensions page, I would love to hear from you. We also would probably love to see anyone's work demonstrated at this meeting. So this is a great place. You don't have to only hear from the PatternFly team during these meetings. So reach out to me if you'd like to present anything. But that's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions before we all part ways today? All right. Then I guess that's it. Thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next month.